Chapter 3. The Calling of Xóchitl. The dawn barely managed to break through the thick clouds that covered the sky. The sun, pale and distant, seemed unwilling to shine over the lagoon. The water was still, as if it had lost the pulse of life, and on its surface floated withered leaves and mud. The air smelled of stale damp, of death hidden in the mist. The men who had witnessed the horror the night before, those still trembling in their canoes, didn't hesitate to row with all their strength toward the shore. The oars struck the water violently, and yet it felt as though the lagoon was holding them back, as if it wanted to swallow their boats forever. Row, row. They're catching up. A young man screamed, his eyes bulging. I don't want to die here, I don't. Sobbed another, drenched in sweat and tears. God protect us, don't look back, don't look. Howled an old fisherman, his voice broken by terror. When they finally reached the shore, they left the canoes stranded and ran without turning back, breath ragged and hearts pounding. Some fell into the mud, others shoved each other aside, as if every second meant the difference between living or being dragged to the bottom. Then it happened. From the center of the lagoon, silhouettes began to rise. They didn't walk, nor did they sink, they floated. Their bodies seemed made of shadow and silt, as if the water had given birth to dead things. From their heads hung tangled branches like putrid hair, and slimy algae slid down their shoulders and arms. Dry roots dangled from their chests and backs, as if the lagoon still refused to let them go. Some had their mouths half open, from which came guttural laments, like screams muffled under water. Others let out a higher sound, like the shriek of timbers sinking in a storm. They had no eyes, only dark hollows that, for an instant, flashed with a gray glow, like embers about to go out. They're not men, they're not men, whimpered one fisherman, collapsing to his knees on the shore. They're the dead. The dead have returned, shouted another before fleeing in panic toward the village. One by one they emerged, dozens, perhaps more, sliding over the surface without touching it. And then, as if driven by a single command, they slowly rose and began drifting toward Iramuco. The wind blew hard, dragging with it a nauseating stench of stagnant water and rotting flesh. The trees bowed, dogs began to howl, and the people of the village understood, with their souls turned to ice, that what had been born in the lagoon was now coming for them. The village began to darken. It was as if time had suddenly run in reverse, from clear morning to a heavy dusk, as though the previous night had returned to swallow the day. The sun disappeared behind a veil of black clouds, and the mist from the lagoon began to seep through Iramuco's streets. The souls floated in silence, moving throughout the town. They slipped between huts, crossed the dirt tracks, and rose before wooden doors as if seeking to enter. Wherever they passed, an inexplicable cold filled the homes, and the glass and clay panes in the windows fogged over, as though someone had breathed on them from the other side. The animals were the first to react. Dogs howled desperately, some fleeing with tails between their legs, others lunging at thin air, barking at the invisible shapes advancing through the alleys. Hens cackled like mad, battering their wings against the pen walls until they bled in their attempt to escape. Mules and horses pounded the ground, grinding their teeth and toppling fences. Even the birds on the rooftops took flight in flocks, only to be swallowed by the enveloping mist. A fisherman who had barely managed to reach his home fell to his knees when he saw the figures pass before his door. Don't let them in, he yelled to his family, shoving furniture against the entrance. Close everything, close it. But the shadows didn't need to open anything. They passed through walls like black smoke, leaving behind the stink of rotten water and dredged lakebed. Within minutes, Iramuco was no longer a living village. It looked like a cemetery inhabited by aimless specters, searching perhaps for something, or someone. In a hut at the edge of town, a woman woke before dawn. Her child's crying forced her up to feed him. As she prepared something in the darkness of the kitchen, she felt with a shiver that they were not alone. A silhouette stood motionless in the darkest corner of the room. Her breath caught at once. The baby stopped crying, as if he too had sensed the presence. Trembling, the woman leaned toward her husband, still sleeping on the mat. "Love, love, wake up," she whispered urgently. "Someone's gotten into the house." The man opened his eyes halfway, still heavy with sleep. But when he heard the desperation in her voice, he sat up at once. Without a word, he picked up a thick stick he kept beside the mat. He rose barefoot, jaw clenched, determined. With slow steps, he advanced toward the figure. The floor creaked under his feet, and each creak boomed like an echo in the dense silence of the hut. The silhouette stood with its back to him, still, almost as if waiting. The man raised the stick, ready to strike from behind. He was only a few steps away. He could smell the reek of wet muck coming from the intruder. Then, without warning, the figure twisted its head a full 180 degrees. The skull bent with a dry crack, revealing a sinister face that stared straight into his eyes. An impossible smile, wide and grotesque, spread across its face. The lips parted to spill a demonic, high-pitched laughter, like the cackle of a clown torn from a nightmare. The man stumbled back, crashing into the table. The stick shook in his hands. The woman hugged the child, who began to wail inconsolably, while that laughter repeated and expanded, flooding the hut and freezing the blood of all who heard it. That day, in the village of Iramuco, harrowing screams were heard. The cries of men, women, and children mingled with the bellowing wind and the laments of the souls drifting through the streets. Huts shuttered, doors slammed on their own, and windows fogged as if someone were breathing from the other side. "Lock the houses, lock everything," someone shouted at a corner. "They're not people, they're not people," cried another, before disappearing into the fog. "My God, protect us," pleaded an old woman, clutching a wooden crucifix that shook in her hands. The specters floated from hut to hut, some passed through walls, others stopped by the pens, driving the animals mad until they died of terror. Each time one of those beings laughed, its echo rolled through the town, breaking the will of anyone who heard it. The fog thickened until it was impossible to see a few yards ahead. The day had vanished. Iramuco was trapped in a darkness that didn't belong to time, as if the lagoon had imposed its own cursed night. Suddenly, silence fell. No screams, no dogs howling, no crowing of roosters. Only the pounding hearts of the terrified, behind mud brick walls. The souls were still there, floating, waiting. And the town understood, with a fear that had no name, that this was not a passing punishment. It was only the beginning of a long night in Iramuco. Meanwhile, dawn arrived with an icy air. The campfire that had accompanied Xóchitl and Xóchitl through the night released only a few wisps of gray smoke. Both had collapsed in exhaustion on the outskirts of Santa Rosa de Lima, the very place where, hours before, the enraged crowd had tried to throw Xóchitl into the flames. Xóchitl leaned over his daughter, gently touching her shoulder. "Xóchitl. Xóchitl, get up," he murmured in a deep, urgent voice. "We have to go." The young woman opened her eyes slowly. She could still hear the crowd's screams in her mind, the accusations of witchcraft, the unbearable heat of the fire that had grazed her skin. "Where will we go, Father?" she asked in a faint voice, trembling more from the memory than from the cold. Xóchitl clenched his jaw, glancing toward Santa Rosa. The town was silent, but it was not a peaceful silence, rather, a simmering hatred. "As far from here as possible, daughter. This town wants us no more, and if we return, they will finish what they started." Xóchitl lowered her gaze to the golden bracelet on her forearm. The metal glimmered faintly, as if it were responding to her father's words. Part of her understood that the bracelet had not only condemned her in the eyes of the town, but was calling her toward a destiny she could not escape. With heavy hearts, they gathered their few belongings and took the path into the forest. The sun had not fully risen, and the mist wrapped around them, hiding them from the eyes of the town they left behind. As they walked, the silence grew thicker than the fog. Only their weary steps and the crunch of dry branches underfoot could be heard. The air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves, as if everything around them wanted to remind them they were entering an unknown place. With a hardened face, Xóchitl broke the silence. "Daughter, I must be honest with you." His voice sounded heavy, as though each word hurt. "I don't know where we're going. I don't know what awaits us. I have no idea where to lead us." Xóchitl looked at him with sorrow. The man who had always given her a sense of safety now walked blind, bearing the weight of fear on his shoulders. Then she felt something strange on her arm, the bracelet. A subtle, almost imperceptible force tugged at her in a fixed direction, as if taking her by the hand and guiding her. She stopped a moment, drew a deep breath, and spoke timidly. "Father, the bracelet. I feel it's guiding me. As if it wants to show us the way." Xóchitl frowned and halted. His tired, mistrustful eyes fixed on the bracelet, which was glowing faintly in the gray light of dawn. "No, daughter," he replied firmly, shaking his head. "Don't heed it. We don't know where it leads. Perhaps it's taking us straight to death." Xóchitl lowered her eyes, pressing the bracelet with her other hand. "But father, I feel it's no accident that I have it." Xóchitl sighed deeply, as if carrying an impossible weight. "We understand nothing about this bracelet. We don't know whether the gods have given it as a blessing, or a curse." He paused for a few seconds, then added, "Until we find out, we keep moving." The forest swallowed them little by little. Amid shadows, mist, and the whisper of leaves stirred by a strange wind, Xóchitl understood that they were not walking alone. Something, or someone, was leading them, and the bracelet throbbed with an ever livelier glow. After hours of walking, Xóchitl and Xóchitl made out a neighboring village. From a distance it seemed calm, smoke rose from the huts, children ran through the dirt streets, and the sound of chickens and donkeys suggested daily life. When they arrived, people looked at them strangely. No one there knew them, but they entered hoping to find lodging and a little food. Xóchitl, weariness etched on her face, tried to smile while Xóchitl asked for help in a firm yet humble voice. But something odd was happening. As they walked the streets, people drew back, whispering among themselves. Some slammed their doors shut, others hastily crossed themselves, and more than a few cast hateful looks. It was as if a bad aura emanated from them, an invisible weight that tainted the air around them. The dogs began to bark furiously, pulling at their chains. Horses neighed nervously and shied away, as if sensing a bad omen. Amid the women's murmurs, venomous words were heard. "They're not from here. There's something strange about them. They bring misfortune." Xóchitl lowered her gaze, clutching the bracelet to her chest. She could feel everyone's eyes piercing her. It was as if the demons dwelling in those people responded to her presence, recognizing something that unsettled them, something that exposed them. With a hardened face, Xóchitl took his daughter's hand. He tried once more to ask for help, but the looks of rejection were enough. No one approached, no one offered bread, water, or shelter. It was as if the whole village had decided to expel them without a word. "Let's go, daughter," Xóchitl finally said, with a dry, wounded voice. "There's nothing for us here." With aching hearts, they left without a reply and resumed the road. Behind them, the shut doors and accusing eyes made it clear that the curse of the bracelet followed wherever they went. After long hours on damp paths beneath trees that seemed to close in on them, Xóchitl smiled faintly as she knelt to splash her face in a river. The water was cold, but the sensation was soothing, washing away not only sweat but the fear that had built up. Father and daughter improvised some rods and soon caught several silvery fish, enough to eat. They lit a small fire on the riverbank, and the aroma of roasting fish mingled with the fresh breeze. For the first time in days, Xóchitl and Xóchitl felt a fragile peace. They ate in silence, listening to the river's murmur and the crackling fire. When they finished, they lay beside the flames, eyes fixed on the sky as it began to darken. But Xóchitl couldn't take her eyes off the bracelet. In the firelight, the gold glowed softly, as if a hidden message was sealed within its shine. She felt it. This was a rest stop, but also a waiting point. Something was watching, even there, amid the calm. Exhausted after eating, Xóchitl drifted to sleep by the crackling fire on the river's edge. A few yards away, her father enjoyed the freshness of the water, bathing beneath a small crystalline waterfall. Xóchitl's sleep was interrupted by that strange sensation she knew so well, a state between sleep and wakefulness, where she couldn't tell dream from reality. She slowly opened her eyes and noticed something unsettling. Everything was different. The river's murmur had ceased. The wind did not move the branches, even the waterfall seemed soundless. Everything had stopped, as though time itself were suspended. She sat up slowly, feeling a tingling on the bracelet, which burned softly on her forearm. She looked around, and though the world was absolutely silent, a movement caught her eye: birds. Dozens of birds, with bright, unfamiliar plumage, circled above her. They didn't sing, didn't make a sound, but their wings beat to a hypnotic rhythm. It was as if they were calling her without words, guiding her with their flight to a single point, the riverbank. Xóchitl took a step, then another, following the birds. She felt something invisible pulling her, the same sensation the bracelet had awakened before. Her breathing quickened, not from fear but from a strange blend of expectancy and wonder. The turquoise river shone brighter than ever, as if a glow came from its depths. And in that instant, Xóchitl understood that she was being called. When she reached the bank, the glow in the water faded slowly and, in its place, a figure appeared seated upon a wet rock: Dorian. His silhouette was unmistakable, the worn tunic, the aged yet serene face, and that deep gaze that seemed to pierce time itself. Xóchitl recognized him at once. Her heart pounded, but this time there was no fear, only a torrent of questions that urged her closer. She walked slowly, the bracelet blazing brighter on her forearm, and sat beside him. Dorian, her voice trembled with emotion and urgency. Tell me more about this bracelet. Where does it come from? Are the gods angry with us? Why me? The old man looked at her in silence for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Then a gentle smile formed on his face. Xóchitl, he said calmly, his tone a whisper and, at the same time, a deep echo: there are not many gods, only one. A single, eternal God who is father of everything we see, the river, the birds, the earth, and every breath in your chest. Xóchitl frowned in confusion. But, my father always spoke of the gods of the hills, the rivers, the thunder. How can there be only one? Dorian extended his hand toward the water, and the river's reflection trembled like a mirror. In it there appeared neither Xóchitl nor Dorian, but a white light that seemed to envelop everything. Because you don't need many to create the eternal. One alone is enough to sustain the universe. The bracelet you carry is not a condemnation, nor a mere adornment, it is a bond. A calling. The bracelet began to throb with a golden radiance that lit Xóchitl's face. She clutched her arm tight, as if trying to understand the meaning of that weight. You say there is only one God, this is new to me, she whispered. My family always taught me of many, the one of thunder, of corn, of rivers and mountains. That is how we have learned since childhood. Dorian lifted his eyes to the overcast sky and smiled with serenity. He is not lord of a single tree or a passing thunderclap, he is the origin of every thunder, of every tree, of all times. The one who was before the hills existed, who formed the seas and breathed life into men. Everything that breathes already belongs to him. He is the source of life, and without him nothing can endure. Xóchitl swallowed. Dorian, and where is this God you speak of? Where is God at this moment? God is everywhere, child. The heavens you contemplate are the throne of his glory, and the earth you tread is the work of his hands. There is no corner of this world where he is not present. Nothing is hidden from him, his eyes pierce the secret of the heart. But do not be afraid, just as all lies open before him, everything is held by his mercy. Xóchitl lowered her gaze to the turquoise river running serene, though inside her everything was confusion. The bracelet pulsed faintly, as if accompanying her unsettled heart. Why does God allow all of this? Why is this happening to people? Why are people exposed to these demons? The old man fell silent for a moment, then spoke gravely. It is not God who has done this to them. They have done it to themselves. They opened their hearts to sin and called darkness with their own hands. They built their lives on lies, resentment, and violence. They traded truth for idolatry, love for envy, purity for lust. The evil they see today did not spring from nothing, it was sown long ago, and now it has borne fruit. Xóchitl gripped the bracelet, a shiver running through her body. Then, is it my task to destroy these demons? Is that what I must do? Dorian shook his head softly. No, child. It is not about destroying them. Your task is not to annihilate, but to hold them at bay. These beings feed on the sin and hatred of men. Your duty is to help those who understand their error, those who repent and seek the truth. Your duty is to bring them peace, so that the power of the demons no longer rules them. The river gleamed with a strange light, and the bracelet burned like a live coal. Remember this, the demons will not go unpunished. They, too, will answer for what they have done. On the day of judgment, they will be called to account for every soul they have tormented. Your mission is to resist, to guide, and to keep hope burning until that day. Xochitl's eyes widened. So, must I stop all the demons? Not all of them, Dorian replied. Only the most mischievous, the ones who wreak the greatest harm on the earth and in hearts. There are demons that are just shadows of what others cause. Though all are dangerous, some have far greater power of destruction than others. And must I do this alone? Xóchitl asked. The old man smiled faintly and pointed to the bracelet. You do not bear this burden alone. You carry a piece of angelic armor. In different corners of the world there are others chosen, each with another piece: the helm, the shield, the sword, the belt, the breastplate. Each has been called for a purpose. And although they do not know each other, together they maintain a secret order, a resistance against the darkness. That is how they are kept in check, until the final justice arrives. Xóchitl drew a deep breath, feeling her destiny expand before her eyes. It was no longer merely she and her father fleeing through the woods. She now understood that she was part of something far greater, a struggle spanning villages and distant lands. Then, she murmured, looking at the bracelet's glow, I am not alone. You never have been, Dorian said calmly. Xóchitl opened her eyes with a start, as if waking from a deep dream. Beside her, her father was still resting. She shook him gently, but urgently. Father, get up. We have work to do. Xóchitl sat up slowly, bewildered. What are you talking about, child? Several of my questions have been answered, Xóchitl replied with resolve. The bracelet guides me. We must move. Seeing the light in his daughter's eyes and the certainty in her voice, Xóchitl nodded. He rose, gathered their few belongings, and together they began to walk. Along the path, Xóchitl broke the silence. Daughter, tell me more about this. I am worried the gods have become angry with us. Xóchitl looked at him tenderly. Father, there is much you must know. Dorian has revealed a truth to me, and I need you to believe it as well. Xóchitl took her hand. It was a gesture that mingled love and fear, but also trust in her. United thus, they kept going. The way was no longer so grim. The mist thinned and sunlight began to filter through the trees. The air was filled with a fresh scent of wet grass and wildflowers. Birds sang above, flitting from branch to branch as if they wished to accompany them on their way. White butterflies crossed before them, and the whisper of the wind was no longer a lament, but a gentle sigh welcoming a new day. For the first time in a long while, father and daughter looked ahead with hope. The bracelet, shining with a disquieting radiance on Xochitl's arm, did not merely accompany them, it was inexorably leading them toward Iramuco. There, Where the demons had already established themselves as masters of the darkness, they waited in silence for her arrival. Destiny was set, and every step they took brought them closer to the heart of the battle.